So Jeffrey, how did you get into the business?
Um, how I got into the business is a pretty funny story. It all started when I was 14, and I was a 14-year-old hillbilly living in Eastern Kentucky, and I saw this movie, A Nightmare on Elm Street, that blew my mind. It's still my favorite movie ever, and I went home and I banged out a prequel on my little typewriter, and I found out who ran New Line Cinema, Bob Shea, and I got the address and I mailed it to him. And he sent it back to me, and he's like, we don't take unsolicited material. Thanks for sending your thing. So I had to look up unsolicited because, I'm 14. I didn't know what that meant. And then I wrote him back. I sent it back to him because I was kind of perturbed. I was like, look, sir, I've seen 3 of your movies, and I spent $3 on your work, so I think you can take 5 minutes to read my story. And he actually read it.
But this is so what year is this? So we're talking like 80.
This was 85.
So this is the time that you could actually call up Bob Shea's office, get a receptionist or get his assistant, and actually maybe possibly get through.
Well, I didn't get through to him on the phone, but I got the.
But even get through to him, period.
Yeah, I didn't. But then I wrote the letter, and once I wrote that second letter, he wrote me back, and he's like, "Thank you for your aggressive introduction," and he read the story, and he was very constructive, and basically his assistant Joy Mann, who was a wonderful woman, she's not with us any longer. Mm-hmm. Her and Bob kind of took me under their wing from afar, and so they would send me scripts and movie posters and just things that a 14-year-old kid in Kentucky like flips out over. And they stayed in touch with me till I was 19, and I went to college in Kentucky at this great college called Berea College, and I went to New York for a summer program to study acting. And Bob and Joy said, "Well, hey, do you want to intern at New Line?" I'm like, "Are you kidding me? Of course I do." And I got an agent and decided to stay in New York, and my internship turned into a position at New Line, and I ended up working there for 11 years, and they ended up producing Final Destination. So
that little thing, that little film that you yeah. little something. I like the way you just dropped that in there. Yeah, they just produced the Final Destination. One of the more successful horror franchises in history. Now, how did you first of all, how did you come up with the idea for Final Destination?
The kernel for the idea came when I was flying home to a lot of stuff is Kentucky based. I was flying home to Kentucky, and I read an article about a woman who was on vacation, and her mother called her and said, "Don't take the flight you're on tomorrow. I have a bad feeling about it." And so she changed flights, and in the story they said the flights that she was supposed to be on crashed. So that put the idea in my head, but I didn't know the story to go with the idea. And then, years later, I was trying to get an agent for writing, and so I had to write a spec script for something that was on TV, and I love the X-Files, so I used that idea as a setup for an X-Files episode. And I got the agent, and then my friends at New Line were like, "This is a great idea. Like, don't send the script in like for an X-Files episode. Like, make it a feature." So I ended up writing a treatment, because back in the day you could sell treatments for projects,
right. Or
so
a pitch, right?
Or a pitch, yeah, you could do that back then. And now it's like, hey, pitch us the story and tell us who your A-list star is.
And do you have 50% of the financing in place already, and you have distribution in place already?
Yeah, it's like the business is changed so much, but one of my friends, Chris Bender, that worked at New Line, had just started working for Craig Perry and Warren Zide, who were producers that had a deal at New Line. And I knew that even though I worked at New Line and I had a straight kind of pipeline to the creative team, I knew that it would give me more juice if I had producers on board, because they would just take it more seriously. But it was a hard sell. Like, they were like, "We don't get death being the killer. Like, you can't see it, you can't fight it." And we're like, "That's the point." And so it wasn't until we threatened to take it to Miramax, they were like, "We'll buy it." So, all right, we'll buy it, and we'll take a chance on it. And
no, it's a great idea. It is such and you're right. I could only imagine back then, because it was like you had Jason, you had Freddy, you had Michael Myers, you had Chucky, and all these, like, you could put that on the poster. You can't put death that has no figure on the poster. So it must have been a difficult sell for the marketing team.
It was, and I think they did a great job with it.
Oh,
and
yeah.
But the whole reason that the whole reason that I want, and I'm glad that when James Wong and Glenn Morgan came on, they fought to make sure that that death never had a form, and they came up with some other amazing thing like the whole Rube Goldberg aspect of it. But the reason that I wanted to
Right.
not give death a form is because I wanted it to be as universal as possible. And if you put like a Western kind of Christian version of death, like Grim Reaper with the sickle or something like that, then it doesn't appeal to people who either have different religious beliefs or spiritual
Yeah,
beliefs or don't
smart.
have spiritual beliefs. So I thought it was very important to not do that, and I think that's why it's been as successful as it has been.
Yeah, it travels very well around the
Yeah,
world because everybody has death in their culture. That is
yeah,
something, that concept is in every culture. The figure of it is different from culture to culture.
right.
But
So
that's a,
people can this movie can project they can project their own version of what death is onto the movie.
which is fantastic. And I remember the trailers of that film. They just and as the sequels kept coming, they kept focusing more and more on the deaths.
Yeah.
That was the selling point. Like, what is the craziest way we could kill somebody?
Yes.
And that became the hook, I guess, as these kept going. How many? There was five, right?
Yeah. There have been five of them, and there will be a sixth one. It was definitely in the works before COVID hit, and now COVID's just kind of put the brakes
Are they
on
are they
everything.
going are they going to kind of reboot the whole thing, or are they going to just make it a straight up sequel? Or you don't know, you can't tell.
Um, I don't. Yeah. I mean, I don't. I don't know if reboot. I think reboot is too strong of a word. Because it's the Final Destination. Films have their formula. A big set piece at the beginning, and then death comes after people. So I don't know if reboot's the right word because that intimates their
But bring a
career.
new generation, I guess. I mean, but every cast was like, you didn't have one cast member that ran through the whole thing, did you? I don't remember.
Tony Todd is the recurring has been the recurring character, and Ali Larter was in the
Right.
first and second one. Yeah, Tony Todd's been he hasn't been in every single one of them, but he's been in like
A lot of,
you know
yeah.
he, yeah he should be in every one of them.
Right.
But there were a few where they didn't put him in there, and they got the message that people love Tony Todd in Final Destination.
Now, I do remember you and I originally met 10 years ago on a panel here in LA, a horror film panel. And I remember you saying on the panel, they're like, look, they can make as many of these as they want because every single time they make one, I get a check. So
Yeah, I know. That sounds
residuals. No,
yeah,
but
that sounds like
good.
yeah. Yeah, that sounds better on a panel. When there aren't many people there, then I sound like a douchebag. No,
No,
but
but no, and I don't
but
mean
it
to
is.
make I don't mean to
Yeah,
make you sound like that. I completely, and I
no,
mean
I'm
that. And
totally kidding.
listen, I know a lot of I've had a lot of screenwriters on board that like they work on a few of the first ones, and then I had the guy who did Air Bud, who created Air
Oh
Bud,
yeah,
and they made 12 of those films. He
I
was
know.
only involved in the first two or three, but every single time they make a new one, he gets a residual check. So that's nothing to be ashamed of as a screenwriter.
Well, and I know, well, even as a horror fan though, it's like I want there to, yes, the money is nice, but I want there to be more because I can't think of any other franchise that's been this successful, and they've only made five of them in 20 years. Like
Yeah,
every
that's
other,
true.
there have been like 20 Halloweens and 20 Friday. There have been like even Nightmare on Elm Street. There's been like it's like come on, make some more because the fans want it, and I need to get some new shoes.